What were some of the challenges that you faced in your transition from low income military to now shifting into real estate?
I had a retired colonel approach me and he's like, Jesse, he's like, we got to sit down. He's like, what are you doing? He said, people on average make about $600,000 on their retirement over a lifetime. How do you tell somebody who has spent a lifetime justifying why they themselves can't do it or shouldn't do it? Bro, I'm trying to make 600 grand a month, bro.
Welcome to Nursing Real Wealth. I am thrilled to have a special guest with me today, Jesse Stanton, with a unique journey that spans 14 years in the Air Force and a successful transition into real estate investing. Jesse has recently added another achievement to his repertoire, achieving launching a coaching business for other entrepreneurs. Jesse will be sharing insights not only into his journey, but also offering his perspective on the mindset, habits, and skills necessary to succeed as an entrepreneur. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Bro, Justin, oh my gosh, man, the pleasure is all mine. I'm so grateful and humbled to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, this is great. So just a little bit of background for folks listening. This is how I met Jesse. Jesse and a few of his friends have put on a series and formed a group within the mentorship community that I am a part of, Gator, and he's also a part of Sub 2, where they are particularly helping people understand how to monetize connections. So the group is called Network to Net Worth, and I've been joining those Zooms. They've been really excellent. So thank you for doing that, Jesse. Appreciate that.
Oh, bro, the pleasure's all mine. No, it's been just as much fun diving into this. You know, we didn't expect it to turn out like that. I had Chanel reached out to me and was having trouble trying to figure out how to monetize as a connector. And I think it was the same day I was scrolling through Facebook, or I was into the Sub 2 Facebook group or something like that. And I saw somebody else ask a similar question. And so I reached out to Chanel. So a little bit of, like you said, I was in the Air Force. And the last couple of years I was in the Air Force, I was an instructor. The Air Force paid for me to go down to Texas and learn how to be a professional teacher, mentor, coach, public speaker. And one thing that I have learned, Justin, when you're learning a new skill or a new habit, the best way to learn something, there's about 1 million different ways you can learn it, but the best way to learn something is to teach it back to somebody. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for Chanel. And I thought, man, you know what? How about we put something on together and we'll start talking about, showing other people how to monetize on their connections. And it's just unraveled into this big thing. I had no idea. I thought it was going to go for maybe 2-3 Zooms. As a matter of fact, if you go back and watch the very first episode, I think we're like, yeah, I don't know. We'll probably go like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, But when you start diving deep into it, I didn't want to just show people and explain to somebody, all right, this is how you do it. This is what you say, all done. One of the big issues that I've seen with entrepreneurs and other people in real estate is it's really easy to get focused on wearing all the hats and doing all the things. And so I was like, man, if we're going to do this series right, let's start from the beginning and let's start with how do you even set up a business as a connector? We're 3 months into it and it's just been a really great time. So I thank you for being there and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, you bet. How about, would you be willing to just share a little bit about your military service and then how you transitioned from that into your current venture of real estate investing and coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from a town in Idaho called Ryrie, Idaho. We eventually moved to a place called Idaho Falls. And dude, I grew up just in an average household. I had average friends. I went to an average school, had average grades. Dude, I was completely average. As a matter of fact, you know what? When I think about like the word money, like my mom I grew up in like a very strict Christian household. So there was like no cussing. There was none of that stuff. I mean, we couldn't even listen to AC/DC or Kiss or anything. My mom used to tell me, as a matter of fact, she said, AC/DC stood for Antichrist, Devil's Children. It doesn't, but that's what she told me. I think she believed that. So I couldn't listen to it. Or KISS stood for Knights in Satan's Service. So I couldn't listen to any of that music. I couldn't cuss. And so consequently, my viewpoint of wealth and money was probably similar to most people's, I would imagine. But she used to call swearing like a 4-letter word. Like there's no 4-letter words in my house. And as I started getting into this, I started to realize, I was like, oh my gosh, like my entire life, the word money in a way in my house was almost treated like a 4-letter word. Like we didn't talk about how to make more money. You didn't ask somebody how much money they were making. Like, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff was hush hush. It was private. But when you get around people that are hustling and trying to make more money, what are they talking about? How to make more money. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I ended up graduating high school early. I left for the Air Force when I was 18 years old. I've lived all over the country. I've been all around the world. And I landed in a place called Wasilla, Alaska, which is where I live now. And I live here with my wife and 4 kids and 2 Yorkies and 3 moose. And we're all just a big, happy family, in this igloo up here. And a couple years ago, I was nearing the end of my military service. This was in 2020. I had a friend reach out to me, and he was a childhood friend that I grew up in Ryrie with. And he's like, Jesse, hey, and we're doing the whole, we hadn't spoken in like 15 or 20 years. So we're doing the whole, hey, what are you up to? What are you up to? And he eventually asked me, he's like, Jesse, have you ever thought about getting into real estate? And I said, yeah, I thought about getting my realtor's license a few years ago. And he's like, no. I was like, I'm not talking about being an agent. He's like, I'm talking about being an investor. And I was like, oh, and Justin, you and anybody else who's listening to this, you guys can go look this up. You can go see exactly what people in the military are bringing in. Spoiler alert, it's not a lot of money.
Right.
So I told him, I was like, dude, I would love to get into investing. It's not like I necessarily have $100,000 just burning a hole in my pocket so that I can go buy a 4-plex in Anchorage, Alaska. And luckily he was patient with me. And he's like, man, you know what? I got a Zoom later in the week with some other investors. How about you just pop in and be a fly on the wall? And I said, okay, beam me up, Scotty. As a matter of fact, Justin, if I'm being totally honest with you, I didn't even want to jump in, dude. Like I was like, oh, I don't even care about this. I didn't want it to be weird because I just like connected with my friend. He was expecting me and I didn't want to like not show up. So I showed up, dude, but I turned my camera off. I put myself on mute. I'm just half listening, dude, while I'm playing games on my phone. But then they said something about like buying real estate and like leveraging other people's money and debt and credit. And that caught my ear. And of course, in my first, I was like, well, this sounds like a scam. Let me hear more. So that was where that was kind of what started the whole rabbit hole for me, man. And then I ended up joining Sub 2 shortly after that. And it was luckily like, it was just, the timing was just perfect. Pace had just started this brand new mentorship called Sub 2. I had no idea who Pace was. I'm just out. As soon as he introduced me, as soon as I got off that Zoom, I spent the next handful of weeks, maybe it was about a month or so before I ended up joining Sub 2, but I'm just researching obviously everything about investing, trying to find all the investment Facebook groups, stumbled upon, Pace's free group and listened to a podcast that he did with him and Steve Train around that time. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. Love it. So signed up and man, it's been now 3.5 years. It's been amazing. It's been phenomenal. Afforded me so many opportunities and, allowed me to leave the military and jump into this full time. And I got a handful of things we got our hands in. So it's been great, brother.
Yeah. What was one of the first ventures that you got into when you got into real estate, or how was it that you made your first real estate buck?
Dude, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this. So if I'm just being vulnerable here for a second, I don't even remember my first deal. I don't remember the address. I don't remember. It was in Memphis, Tennessee. That's all I know. Don't know how much money I made. I don't know how long into the mentorship I was. It was probably somewhere within a year. somewhere between 9 to 12 months. I would imagine, I think is where it was. But, it was, I guess it was kind of anticlimactic for me, dude. Like as soon as I remember, as soon as we got it, my attention was already on the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And so I felt like I'd been struggling for so long to try to figure this thing out, to get some momentum, that by the time it came, like it kind of lost its lust, its wonder, so to speak. So, yeah, dude, I really don't remember too much about it. It's kind of an anticlimactic story, bro, but, I know it was.
There you go, folks. There you go, folks. In 3 years, you could start out with this podcast, and in 3 years, you could forget your first deal. That's amazing.
Yeah, man. I remember Pace talks about his first deal, and he remembers the address and everything about it.
He has a unique memory.
That is true.
Yeah. I don't know of too many people that can go and call up in their mind one specific Instagram DM that he got 5 days ago at 4 p.m. But Pace can, yeah, that's Pace.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, did you start out with like wholesaling or what was what sort of your method for, starting?
Yeah. It was wholesaling. I had, right after I had joined, I had met up with 2 other sub 2 students, like none of the stuff that you, have probably heard or are familiar with. None of the way that sub 2 is right now, obviously none of that stuff existed, dude. It was very, very bare bones. None of the Zooms and stuff that we have every week existed. So people had to take it upon themselves to build a Zoom. And I remember one guy, he put together a Zoom, and we were going to do some role playing. It was probably one of the first role playing Zooms that they had done. And everybody who jumped in, he divided everybody up into 3, and everybody got separated into like breakout rooms. And I got broken out with these 2 other individuals, and we did our role play real quick. And then while we're waiting to get put back into the group, we're like, what are you guys doing? Oh, and then they talked about, all right, well, I'm looking for a VA. I was like, oh, well, cool, dude. Like, what if we all split a VA? And in my mind, I thought we were going to pay for a VA, and I was going to use them for, like, I was just going to do things on my own, and the other 2 were going to do things on their own. And they've never heard this story before, so this is funny. But I thought we were all going to split the cost of a VA and work our own businesses, and the other 2 thought that we were going to be partners. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm down with that too. And so one of the other partners was into wholesaling. He had already kind of had a little bit of experience with wholesaling. So consequently, I was like, all right, well, you ever seen Talladega Nights?
No.
You haven't seen Talladega Nights?
I haven't.
So there's a scene in there when Will Ferrell is getting interviewed on TV, and he's talking about the car. He's a race car driver, and he's like, car, it ran good. Car was good. And then his hands are doing this, and the reporter's got to put his hands back down, and he's still talking about the car. And he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And in a way, Justin, like that was me, dude. I was like, I'm jumping into sub 2. I guess we're wholesaling. Don't even really know what that means, but I'm just, you tell me what to do. I don't know what to do with my hands. This is me right now. So that's what we did. We started out wholesaling and learned a lot, bro. It was a good first year for sure.
Nice. How would you say your background in Air Force influenced your decision-making and maybe even your strategies in real estate, if at all? And then do you find any specific principles from your military service applicable to investing?
Oh my gosh.
The reason I ask that is because my primary focus is on audience folks who are, maybe looking at either a secondary income source or they're looking to quit their job. So how can you leverage the things you already know is kind of what I'm thinking about,
Okay. I love that, dude. Yeah. No, amazing question. I didn't cognitively realize this at the time, but looking back, I did 14 years in the Air Force. As you guys can imagine, the Air Force, the way that obviously everybody, I'm sure, associates the word structure with military. That obviously probably makes sense to most people. what people probably don't necessarily take the time to think about is the way that the Air Force has designed their structure to include things like curriculum and all this other kind of stuff that they have to teach people. They have to become ingrained and start learning about Air Force heritage and what it is we're doing here and all that kind of stuff. And so right down to even like the curriculum, a lot of people don't realize, but they have done, in my opinion, a completely unparalleled and second to none job of being able to create. If you think of the Air Force kind of like a business, they've done such an amazing job creating a business where you can take anybody in the world with, regardless of what their background is, regardless of what their experience is, regardless of how old they are. And you can bring people into this business and bring everybody up to a place to where there is a minimum standard of operation, I guess you could say. So you bring in on, it starts with basic training. You bring all these people in from all walks of life, all different mindsets. And with the curriculum, the structure, the time management, they bring everybody up to this minimum standard of operating. And then from there, that's where that serves as the foundation for your military experience to grow from. And I remember one specific time, this is where I started getting really, really into mindset and how all of these skills kind of transferred, but it wasn't cognitive. It wasn't intentional at the time. I didn't realize what was going on. But I remember there was a time I went and applied for a job as an OSI agent. An OSI, think of OSI as the FBI or the CIA or the DEA. They're a federal agency, but their jurisdiction, all those federal agencies have their own jurisdictions. This OSI's jurisdiction is specifically just like Air Force matters. So any child trafficking or like anything that happens that you would see in the civilian world, that stuff happens in the Air Force too. But OSI is like the people who handle all that stuff. So, but OSI is kind of seen as like the cream of the crop. And I remember going to an OSI, what's it called? Like a job fair, I guess you could say. Like we had probably about 100 people show up to this thing, people of all ages, and they're just there to figure out like, what is OSI? Like if I wanted to go apply for OSI, what does that look like? And they're kind of giving you the rundown of everything. And they said, hey, I want everybody to take a look to their left and then look to their right. And out of everybody in here, we're hiring one person. I was like, oh, snap. Okay. And everybody who left, their homework was to create a resume and submit it to this org box. And then you'll be called in for an interview. They'll call in 12 people for an interview. And so I was one of the people that called in. And dude, as soon as I got the call, I got my date. It was probably about a week and a half from the time I got that call. And dude, I am losing weight, Justin, because I am so nervous. My anxiety for those 10 days was so high. And I remember the day of the interview came, and I've been trying to prep as best as I could. And the day of the interview came, and I remember calling my dad on the way to the OSI office. And I'm just telling him, like, Dad, dude, I've lost so much weight this week just because of how anxiety induced I am about this thing. And he said something that I will never forget. And it completely changed everything about that interview. It completely changed everything about what I do in my business and what I continued to do in the military after that. This is probably about 10 years ago that this happened. And he said to me, Jesse, they need you more than you need them. And regardless of whether or not that was true or not, Justin, in my head, as long as I believed that changes everything. So I remember as soon as he told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, like my mind it flipped the script on everything. I walked in there. In my mind, I walked in there like I owned, like if you could own OSI, like that's how I walked in there. So I was confident and I was cool and I was collected. And when I got called into the room, it was almost like an interrogation room almost. There was a board, a big table with probably about 7 or 8 special agents. And there's a chair in the middle of the room, and that's it. For about an hour and a half, they're just like pinging questions off you. And long story short, I ended up getting the call that night. And they said out of everybody, there was 100 people in there. reduced it down to 12 people. Out of the 12 people that interviewed, I was the one that got selected to move on. And that really served as a staple for me understanding what personal development is and how all of this kind of plays into what we're doing here. And obviously, I continued elevating my military career, the positions that I was in, the leadership positions that I was in charge of, and I failed a lot, and I learned a lot, and I succeeded a lot. And so even little things like that, man, when you jump into building this business, there was so much of that I was able to take away from that. And I'll give you a real specific example. I had a meeting with my team on Tuesday night. So 2 days ago, I had a meeting with my team for my coaching business. There's 7 of us on this team now. And I usually run our team meetings every week. And I put together the outline for what that's going to look like Monday night. I email it to everybody Monday night. So come Tuesday night, everybody knows what to expect already and what they need to be prepared for and what information I'm going to need and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I told them, I said, hey, here's what we're going to do. One of the changes we're going to make during our team huddles is I'm going to continue sending out that email of what I want, of what we're going to go over. But here's what I do want. I want everybody in here every week, we're going to alternate who runs this meeting. So I want everybody in here, regardless of what position you are in my company, however high or however low, there's going to be a minimum standard of communication, of delegation, of leadership, of being able to articulate that we're going to have here. And so I took a lot of that stuff, from the military and have implemented it. Dude, our team, at the risk of sounding arrogant, is phenomenal. Dude, everybody loves being here. Our group chat is nothing like every single morning. Everybody's like, hey guys, hope you have a fantastic day. Just want to let everybody in here know I love you. And then that's just reciprocated throughout the entire day in this group chat, man. It's nothing but love and abundance. And that a lot of that stuff isn't real estate specific, but it's stuff that has stemmed from my experience. And, regardless of people that are listening to this or watching this, is little things like that you can take from your experience in the civilian world or whatever background that you guys have and implement that into your business. It makes all the difference. I know to cap on that real quick, the cherry on top, I remember thinking, so you guys can see my background. I love music. Big Kiss fan. Love Kiss. For those of you guys who don't know who Kiss is, you go look them up. But they have their theatrics on stage, their concerts, like fire, blood, like the makeup, like it's very it's not just music, like it's a very theatrical show as well. And I remember watching an interview with the 2 founders, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. They said, "Where'd you guys come up with all this stuff?" Because in the 70s, dude, this was like, holy cow. It's no wonder my mom thought this was satanic. There's nothing out that was like it. It was like, what is this? But from their perspective, they were like, dude, we just wanted to put on a show or a rock concert of what we would want to see if we were fans in there. Just as fans of music, what is it that we would want to see? And let's go create it. And so it's interesting because I took that same mentality. And if I was to work for somebody, or if I was to be part of somebody's business, what would I want that to look like? How would I want, the owner to invest in my growth and in my development? And so, I took all that structure and the things that I did in the military and, brought that to my business. And it's been absolutely amazing. When you have happy people that are working with you, dude, the sky is the limit. It makes the biggest difference, bro.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. I like the reference to mindset, even though it's a slightly different mindset, that you were developing in yourself, than maybe what things you've specifically developed in yourself over the course of going into real estate.
100%.
That's super, super important. And just to harken back a little bit to even something your mom taught you, I'm not unfamiliar with that. I'm still I'm a worship leader at my church, and I'm involved in a fairly conservative circle. And it is not uncommon. I had definitely been raised around Christians who have this mindset that all wealth or money is evil. And it's very interesting to me. The Bible actually never does teach that money is evil. It does say the love of money is evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's the root of all evil. And so if you're raised in a circle that does teach that money is the root of all evil and doesn't pay attention to that little twist of word, the love of it is the root of all evil, you're going to develop a mindset that, is going to have a very different perspective towards the pursuit of getting for yourself excess that could be used for very valuable and worthwhile endeavors. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For me, my pursuit of money is not for the pursuit of money. It's not for that alone. It is for the ability to have the tool of money to achieve the things I want to achieve, that I can't achieve without that tool. So those are their belief systems, their things that you were taught as a kid that could impact your choices. And it's so easy to come out with the wrong notion of things, even inadvertently in different circles. So, that's good. We're kind of shifting into the topic of mindset, actually. And but before we get there, I did want to just ask briefly, what were some of the challenges that you faced in your transition from low income military to now shifting into real estate, kind of that conundrum of working full time? I don't know what your life was like, but for me, I think of, well, I'm working full time, I've got a nice steady income, but that shift takes a lot of effort. I know you've shared this story on the Network to Net Worth, but maybe just share that for our audience a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I totally agree, man. And that's probably a good place to start, man. Like that when you start making this shift, and especially after leaving the military after 14 years, because when you hit 20 years, you don't have to wait till you're 60 or 65 to retire. You start collecting a check immediately. So had I gotten to 20, by the time I was 38, I would have started collecting retirement immediately. My medical would have been covered immediately for the rest of my life. So leaving after 14 years, that perceived security to my family and everybody else, nobody could understand it. And that's part of that transition, bro. That is extremely hard, because the people that I worked with, my friends, my family, my neighbors, like everybody, dude, it was like, Jesse, what in the F are you doing, bro? This makes no sense. Like, why would you give up all this security, a guaranteed retirement, all this, you know what I mean? I even had a retired colonel. It was about a month before my date, before I officially got out. I had a retired colonel approach me, and he's like, Jesse, he's like, we got to sit down. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, think about this. He said, people on average make about $600,000 on their retirement over a lifetime. How do you tell somebody who has spent a lifetime justifying why they themselves can't do it or shouldn't do it? How do you tell somebody like that, bro, I'm trying to make $600,000 a month, bro? You know what I mean? You can't. And that's kind of the hard part of this transition, is people aren't going to understand that. And like you said, they're going to think it's about the money. And in reality, it has nothing to do with money. And they're the same people that'll complain about not being able to make their mortgage payment, not being able to pay rent, not being able to buy Christmas the way that they want to buy Christmas for their family. But they'll be the first ones to tell you we shouldn't be talking about money. But we need money. What helps people during natural disasters? What builds churches? What sends missionaries out? It's not free. The more I make, the more I can contribute to those things. The more I can contribute and help out people. One of my things I would love to, one of the things I'm going to do this year for Christmas, I want to go put like $5,000 on like a Walmart gift card. I don't even know if you can put that much on there, but I'll figure it out. And I just want to give it to a cashier and just let her run it all day until it runs out. Like that's what I want to do, with my money. And making that transition, dude, people don't understand that. It's not about the money, dude. It's about the time. It's about being able to buy back your time. I was actually talking with my cohort last night. We had class last night, and we're all reading a book called How to Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. We're all reading this book together, and Dan even explains like that book sparked up a conversation of how I think it was Dean Graziosi. He was telling a story to his mom about how he has somebody takes out his trash, and his mom in her head was like, you think you're better than everybody? But in his, it's not that at all. He's become so cognizant of every second of his day that, you know what I mean? Like the time it's going to take and the amount of mental energy that it's going to take to not only remember to take out the trash, but maybe to do the dishes or fold laundry, any of those, you know what I mean? It's not just one thing. It's never one thing. It piles up into this big thing, and they seem like miniature things, but they all add up. And so I remember, growing up in my household, people look at rich people and think greedy. They can't even take their own trash out. They're all high and mighty. And in reality, that's not the case at all, man. They've just become so cognizant of their time and the things they're trying to accomplish and dedicate to serve, the greater good. It was a huge mindset shift. And that's the hardest part, man, when you're battling everybody else against you, but you don't. Alex Hormozy talks about it. In order to get from this place to this place, you have to become an entirely different person. In order to make $1 million a year or $1 million a month, you have to become an entirely different person. You have to think differently. You have to manage your time differently. You have to hold yourself accountable differently. You have to look at opportunity differently. You have to look at your strengths and acknowledge your weaknesses differently. You have to look at failure differently. The things that you tolerate in your life have to be different. I can't tell you how many people, as an example, that are like, well, I want to make $1 million, but I've got to have 8 hours of sleep. It's like, okay, well, tell me how many dividends that's going to be paying you, in 6 months, or how much money has 8 hours of sleep paid you in the last 12 months, and you still don't have a deal. I know what that feels like, but at the same time, I've also been through that transition. You have to eat crap for 2 years, man, if you want to eat sushi for the rest of your life. But most people aren't willing to do that. Most people aren't willing to grind. Most people aren't willing to be uncomfortable. And it's those small things that have to change. But unless you're working on your self-development and understand those things, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. And it's a lonely time when you're making that transition from W-2 and trying to bridge that gap between, making that kind of income that could change your life and your family's life, but you don't quite have the success yet that you're looking for. So you're really in that in-between period right there where you're trying to detach from your friends, but you really don't have a new set of friends to loop yourself into quite yet. So it can be a make or break for, a lot of people. So it's a really hard place to be. For me specifically, on top of facing those challenges, I was also in Alaska. And so my partners were on the East Coast. So I'm 4 hours behind everybody else. So here's what was going on when I first started this was I would wake up at 5 a.m. every day, and I would leave the house. I'd get dressed, shower, and get dressed, leave the house at 5:45. I'd commute for an hour to Anchorage, and I would get to work at 6:45. And I'd work from 6:45 till 1600, which is 4 o'clock. And then I'd have an hour drive back. So by the time I'm even walking in the door, it's 5 p.m. in Alaska. Well, in the market that I'm working with my other two partners in Florida, it is 9 p.m. So by the time I'm even walking through the door, bro, it is 9 p.m. And it's like, dude, how many sellers am I going to get a hold of at 9 p.m.? Not to mention that my wife is a nurse. She was working nights. So she would leave the house at 5:30. I'd walk in the door at 5. She's leaving at 5:30. I've got 4 kids now. I had 3 at the time. One of them was a newborn. And so I'm left to make dinner, feed my kids, get my kids bathed, get them in pajamas, get them in bed. I was finishing up my degree at the time. So I had homework. And then on top of that, I'm like, dude, I've got a business I got to run and I got to call sellers. And all this is happening at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So I felt like if there was one person in the world, bro, who could complain about time, I really felt like it was me. But I came across a video. Dude, it was a godsend. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I came across a video by Pace shortly after all of this was going on. And you can imagine just the stuff that was going on in my mind, the self inflicting, negative mindsets and things that I was having. I started telling myself, why did I just get myself in all this credit card debt? Why did I think I could do this? Jesse, you're not an investor. You're going to be, in the military, and you're going to retire in the military, and you're going to do this. And you live in Alaska. There's no resources here. There's no people here. There's no money here. Why did you do this? So I'm just self-sabotaging myself during this whole time, man. Not getting any traction, not nothing. And I came across a video by Pace. Don't even remember what the video was. Scrolling through the comments, and I remember this comment. This comment stuck out, dude. It was snarky as all get out. Don't remember what the comment said, but I remember reading it like, oh my gosh, like Pace is the nicest guy. Like, why would anybody say this? But I noticed that Pace responded to it. I was like, that's interesting. But what he said, the way that he responded, man, was exactly what needed to happen in my life, because it changed everything. I don't have any tattoos. I'm never going to get any tattoo. If I was going to get a tattoo, I'd get this thing written across my forehead. Like, that's the biggest impact that it made, man. But it said, millionaires don't complain about time. I was like, okay. So then I started having all these other thoughts right when I read that. It was, I remember I immediately went to, all right, well, what do I know about millionaires? Well, I know that 90% of them are self-made. So odds are, if 90% of millionaires are self-made, then most of those, if not all of them, went through something similar that I went through with regard to time and working and a family and all that other kind of stuff. So if they could do it, why can't I? What am I missing here? If we all have the same 24 hours, why can people like Grant Cardone and Pace Morby get dropped off anywhere in the country and start up $1 million business in a matter of weeks or months with the same 24 hours that I have? What am I missing here? And then I had the idea. I was like, oh my gosh, you know what I could do? I could start waking up at 3 a.m. Now, 3 a.m. in Alaska is 7 p.m. in Florida. Probably a little early still to be calling sellers, but better than after, they've been in bed for an hour. And so that's what I started doing, Justin. I started waking up at 3 a.m. I'd grab my laptop and my phone, and I'd go into my car. I'd sit in my car in my garage, so I didn't wake everybody else in the house up making calls. And that's what I did, dude. And I did that for months. And that's one of those things where it's interesting because your personal, your income will never exceed your personal development. And this is part of your personal development, being willing to do things when nobody else will, when you don't feel like doing it. You'll never always be motivated. So you have to be disciplined. And that's part of it. So then I started seeing a bunch of traction. I was like, oh my gosh. And I've got that hour-long drive into work. So now I'm getting nearly 4 hours of work done before work, before my day even starts. People are still in bed, dude. And I've got more work done than they have. And the day hasn't even started yet. So then by the time I got off work, I had all that stuff to do. But then I was like, all right, I can connect with my partners. I can connect with other investors. And I can work on content. None of that stuff necessarily is on it. I can do that at my leisure once I get home at 5 p.m. So that's where everything started, man. But that's where that transition happened for me. And, it was a blessing in disguise because it put me in a very unique position that I don't think most people get to be in. Being in Alaska, being in the time difference. And then not only that, dude, there's literally, I don't say this ambiguously or to be obtuse, but there's literally nobody else up here doing what you and I want to be doing. Nobody at the time, nobody even knew what wholesaling was. Nobody's wholesaling multiple deals, consistently. Nobody's doing 10 deals a month here, 20 deals a month here. So that doesn't exist. So having to go through, battle my mind with a lot of these, I kind of feel like, in a way, I almost had my own version of Goggins, only Jesse. So I kind of had my own mental struggles to overcome.
Now, obviously, we've already touched on this. Mindset's critical.
100%.
I can't tell you how many times I balked at the idea of mindset. I used to get kind of annoyed when I would listen to real estate investor. I was just like, just tell me how to do it. Don't tell me about the mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And part of that is because some mindset coaches are a little weird. They get into some odd stuff. But,
some woo-woo stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is literally the way that Shane described it. Woo-woo. Yeah, I mean there is some really odd stuff out there, but
yeah,
that's
100%.
that's not always what it entails. It literally is just shifting the way you think about things and shifting and disciplining your mind, taking ownership of your mind, not letting it just do whatever you want to let it do. You know what I mean? You're
Absolutely.
in charge.
Absolutely.
So, obviously you've kind of described how crucial mindset is. But what strategies or practices do you follow? Or, what strategies do you follow to cultivate and then maintain a growth mindset for yourself?
Amazing question, bro. So one of the things I ended up doing dude, by the way, like I said, I did 14 years in the Air Force, and as great of it as an experience as that was, I felt like I've undergone more growth in the last 14 months than I did in 14 years in the Air Force. And one of those things that I have done to do that, I read like nobody's business. I have read 44 books so far this year. So I got 6 more to finish before the end of the year to hit my goal of 50. And I've been I'm
going to pause you there, just right there.
Okay.
To my listeners, any of you who have listened regularly, have you caught on to the theme of every single person I've interviewed? They all read a lot.
Really?
That's a good habit. Every single one of the people that I've interviewed has at least 1 or 2 books that they offer up without me even asking, that they have read recently or that made a major impact on how they are performing today. Every single guest.
Interesting.
Anyway,
there's a theme here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's a theme. There's a theme.
Dude, I read like nobody's business, man. I consume content in books mostly, more than, probably most people. But the one thing that I do as it relates to real estate, when I got into real estate, I had to start developing these skills. I wasn't an integrator, I was a visionary. So it's like, all right, well, let's break down what a visionary is. To my knowledge at the time, a visionary builds relationships with people and closes deals. That was what my understanding of vision, like the avatars, when I came into Sub 2, like none of that stuff was a thing. Connectors wasn't a thing. Gator wasn't a thing, obviously. Like none of that stuff was a thing. You were either an integrator or you were a visionary. Was obviously not an integrator. So I started reading books that would not only make me a good closer, but I went into it with the mindset of how do I become the Michael Jordan of closing deals? Like what does that look like? The thing that most people get wrong, man, when they're learning a new skill or something like that, they do it until they get it right. People who pitch creative, they do it just enough, just until they get it right. And then once they get it right, that becomes the standard. And they don't work at it anymore beyond that. So the frame of mind that I put myself in was, I don't want to do it till I get it right. But I want to learn it and do it until I can't get it wrong. And I think Pace set that standard. If you ever listen to Pace, talk to a seller, how he communicates, he couldn't screw it up if he wanted to. He would have to cognitively think about how to muff up that conversation because he's so good at communicating. He's so good at drawing value and making people feel welcomed and appreciated. And even if they're hostile, and he just does such a great job of this, and it's not, the way that you get there isn't just learning how to close deals. You don't just get there from talking to a bunch of sellers. If you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. In order to do that, you have to have different information than you have had up to this point. So for me, it wasn't enough to just close deals. by talking to sellers. I started reading books about negotiating. I started reading books about persuasion. I started reading books about effectively communicating. I started reading books about leadership. I started reading books about telling stories, how to be a good storyteller. So all of these things have kind of culminated into propping me into a position where I became really, really good at closing deals. And in my mind, Michael Jordan of closing deals. Now, obviously, those skills aren't just confined to closing deals, right? That's where I started like learning how to monetize connections. Because when you can relate with people, when you read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, that plays a huge part in how you communicate, how you think about what somebody else might be thinking, all that kind of stuff. And so it's interesting how all the skills were built up in that area, and then they kind of transfer into everything else. So I started reading books about skill set, and then I started reading books about mindset. And so I read 2 books at the same time, and I still do it to this day. I read a book in the morning when I wake up about mindset, and then later in the day, right before I go to bed, I read a book about skill set. So I start out my day with mindset. Even to this day, now that I'm no longer in the military, I still wake up at 3. My alarm goes off at 3. And one of my habits is my AirPods sit on my nightstand, and I plop my AirPods in before my feet even touch the ground. And I just start a mindset book. So the whole time while I'm getting ready to go to the gym, I'm filling up my pre-workout, I'm filling up, my gallon of water for the day, and I get in my truck and I make it to the gym at 3:30, 3:35. I've got 30, 35 minutes of reading in for the day already. So it's not like I'm sitting around reading a bunch of books. Like I'm not spending hours and hours and hours just reading books all day to read that many. I'm just more consistent than anything else. It's the same thing. You ever seen Groundhog Day with Bill Murray? It's the same thing every single day, dude. I'm Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, dude. It's the same thing every single day. I'm more consistent than anything. But that was kind of one of the big things. That's one of the big habits. To make a long story long, Justin, that's one of the big things that has contributed to my mindset growing at the rate that it has. Is the content, the books that I read, dude, are just. And I do it consistently, and I read 2 at the same time. One's always a skill set book, and one's always a mindset book. So that's how I grow it and maintain.
That's cool. Very interesting combination there. Mindset and skill. I guess I never really thought about doing 2 at the same time. I'm trying to get through 1.
Yeah. And I didn't either. It just happened to work out that way. And then when I started becoming a little more intentional with journaling my thoughts and how things were growing, and being able to look at my previous journal entries from 6 months ago or a year ago, I was like, holy cow, there's a lot of growth happening between this period. I started kind of reverse engineering what some of those habits were. And that was a major one. So you brought up Shane. Shane, he and I geek out. Like we become like book nerds together now. So we're always reading books and stuff together.
I love it. Maybe I need to join your book club.
Dude, join us. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So you're touching on a kind of the next area that I would like to go, which is habits. Habits building your mindset is kind of what I'm getting. Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing with most of the folks that are highly successful is they all have habits. All humans have habits. Some are good and some are just bad. But what daily or, routine habits contribute to your success in real estate? We've already talked about the reading, but are there any other things that you feel are essential habits?
I think you'll probably, and I'm sure you probably heard this from some of your guests as well, but fitness has been a huge part of my daily habits and how all that kind of has sprouted into other things. It's funny that 75 hard is a great example of that. A lot of people think 75 hard is, one of those fad internet diets, but it's not a diet at all. It's total mindset. The whole thing is mindset. And as a byproduct of maintaining the consistency of those habits, you end up getting 6-pack abs. So 6-pack abs isn't the goal. It's a mindset thing, but all these things just manifest and come to fruition as a byproduct of building those habits. And we talked about discipline a little bit, but discipline is a habit. It's something that you want to develop, and especially if you don't feel like doing something, if you don't feel like going to the gym, if you don't feel like making that call. Ed Milet's got a book. He's called The Power of One More. I'm sure you've probably heard of it if you haven't read it yet. Phenomenal book. But even just those little things, he talks about, when he goes to the gym, if he's doing 4 sets of 10, he does one more. He'll do 11. If he's making phone calls, he'll make one more call. And so just developing that habit alone with anything that I do, even if I'm tipping, I'll tip $1 more than I typically would. So kind of just pushing, making sure that something like that's always on my filter has been a really neat change. Habits of networking and having very clear ideas and visions and goals for what you're wanting to do, and developing habits of how you want to see opportunity and where you can leverage opportunity and connect with other people that align with what it is you're trying to do. A lot of people, when they connect with just kind of just anybody and everybody, and they jump into it like, all right, like we got a phone call or a Zoom scheduled. I'll see what happens. And, it may turn into something and it may not, but they're going into it without any sort of intention on, what it is that they're looking for, and how they could create something that could align, with what it is they're trying to do if they were to be intentional about it. So intention's a big thing for me as well. But just finding other ways to get uncomfortable. I think that's a huge thing. I think a lot of people don't want to fail. And I'm not saying like I'm over here like, oh, dude, beam me up for the fail ride. Let me get on the fail train here. Like, I'm not saying I'm immune to not wanting to fail or anything either. But hindsight, and everybody says this, but failure is a huge part of this whole thing, and it plays into mindset. So my mindset stuff is, it's not woo-woo stuff. It's just kind of understanding. It's just like we were talking about. It was just thinking differently, waking up early, being uncomfortable, having an uncomfortable conversation, learning leadership skills, learning communication skills, learning delegation skills, accountability, having, your integrity has to change, all these kind of things. It's all right up here. Those are all like mindset and self-development skills, so, don't get me wrong. I meditation is a part of my habits as well, but, some of those other things are where I've noticed the biggest leaps and bounds, and something that I have known that is synonymous with successful people. Those are the exact skills like leadership, communication, delegation, accountability, all those kind of things. Those are the habits that it doesn't matter from my perception anyway. It's not like I own all these businesses yet, but you look at people like Pace or Grant Cardone. Pace is a good example. I mean, he owns tons of, I don't even know how many businesses this guy owns, but he's doing this business buying thing now, right? So regardless of whether he owns a real estate business, a bowling alley, a mini golf course, he's able to do all that and grow these businesses simply be using the same skills that he used to build his real estate company. And a lot of that is accountability, it's delegation, it's marketing, sales. So once you understand that, you've got to remove yourself from the hustler into the CEO role. A lot of people have a hard time rolling into that CEO role, and they put themselves in a position where 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, 5 years, 10 years, they still end up in a position where they are the hustler. They're still the employee in their own business. And that's who Pace is buying these businesses from, are from those people who spend all this time and they're like, I just want to retire, but they have no idea how to grow it or anything like that. So they sell it.
I think you touched on this a little bit, but kind of curious, maybe do you have any exercises that you recommend somebody go through to help discover some of the personalized habits they ought to develop beyond those essential habits? Maybe discovering for themselves a specific habit that they ought to do for themselves.
Dang, man. Getting deep. I think in my humble opinion, as I'm thinking about that question, I think about me, I think about my partner, I think about in both businesses and the circumstances that each one of us are in and our roles within our business. And my habits are completely different than both of my business partners in both businesses. but yet stuff, things still get done. Things are moving the way that they should. And I think a lot of that is largely due to what your role is within your business. And whatever your role is going to contribute probably to a lot of what those habits need to be for your particular situation. So if you are, and I'll use real estate as an example. If you are if your role is a closer within your business, then developing any sort of habits or skills that relate to paperwork or TC or disposition, maybe even lead generation to an extent, like those aren't habits or roles or time that you should spend, in any one of those things. So I think that it's a great question. I honestly don't know if I have an answer for you. I think it's going to be, in my experience anyway, subjective a little bit to what your role is within your business. And then you're going to have to kind of start reverse engineering. If this is the role that I'm in my business, what are the habits that I need to build to not only get to a point where I'm succeeding in this, but where can I take it to the next level? How can I become the Michael Jordan at this thing? And when you talk to a lot of successful people, or you read a lot of books on what successful people are doing unanimously, they repeatedly discuss focusing on one thing, and they're very, very intentional with focusing on one thing and one role. And that's the one thing that they do better than anybody else in their business. And when you can identify that, your habits are going to be very specific to you and your role and your circumstances, the way that you think, that you process information, the way that you take action on it. So that's where I would start.
I think that's still a good answer. You say you don't have an answer for that. That's still an excellent answer, because we're talking about, really honing in on what are you trying to accomplish, your goals, or your role in the company, and then trying to reverse engineer, is really what you're pulling out there. And that Absolutely. I think that's really good. It's a good food for thought for folks who are trying to figure out what their path is.
Well, thank you, brother.
This year you ventured into coaching.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what led you to start the coaching business, and how does it complement your real estate endeavors too?
So the last 3.5 years of my 14-year career in the Air Force, I was an instructor. And it was also coincidentally around that time that I started getting into sub 2. So again, one of the best ways to learn a skill is to teach it. So I was learning all this stuff in sub 2, and then I'd go to work. And as soon as we were on break or something like that, I'd be like, hey, you guys want to learn some cool stuff? Let me show you guys how to make some money. Let me show you how to leverage your VA loan. So I'd be up on the whiteboard drawing all this stuff, and it was neat because it helped me reinforce all the things I was learning by having to teach it. So I started understanding things at a very rapid rate and in a very intimate way. And I wasn't just teaching it to one person, I was teaching it to my entire class. So obviously you got multiple people asking questions, and you know what? FYI, and you're in a leadership position, so you understand this. When somebody asks you a question that you don't know, you got to maintain authority here. And so you say, hey, you know what? How about on break, or when you go back to your house, or tomorrow, how about you go find the answer and you let me know what you come up with, and then we'll talk about it. And then you go home and you got to research it. But so that it was great, man, because people were challenging me. People were asking me questions, and it put me in a position where I had to be able to learn how to back up the information that I was trying to teach these guys. And it was really, really awesome. So that's where my true passion was. As soon as I started getting into real estate, and I started figuring out how to shortcut and build a successful real estate business, I wanted to bridge the gap between, as cool as real estate is, I wanted to bridge that gap and do something I was truly passionate about. Real estate doesn't tickle my fancy bone. So I wanted to do something that I was truly passionate about. And that's what I learned while I was in the military, was instructing, teaching people. So that's what sprouted this coaching business. I wanted to show everybody what I've learned and how to shortcut and take off the real estate business as fast as possible. Kind of going back to that KISS analogy. I wanted to create something that I wish I would have had when I was available or when I was starting out. So that's what I did. It's been awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you look ahead now into 2024, what clarity have you gained about the direction you want both your real estate and your coaching business to take?
In short, to set appropriate goals, to dream big, to understand that it is as equally as easy to make $10,000 a month as it is $100,000 a month. I remember when I first heard that, I used to think that means I have to work 10 times harder. And my days are already limited. I'm already working 18 hours a day. I don't got time to do something that's going to, have to commit, all this other extra time and effort just to get to that 10x mark that I don't have. So understanding that it takes just as much time, energy, and effort to make 10 grand a month as it does 100 grand a month has really allowed me to propel where I'm at this year and then even set my goals even higher for next year. So I'll share a couple of those with you. We dissolved our wholesaling business on the real estate side about 8 weeks ago or so. And we've just been on a buying frenzy. I think 2 weeks ago, purchased $1 million in real estate. I think last week we got under contract on another 2 or 3 million. This week, I don't even know where we are, to be honest with you. Probably another million, maybe 2 million that we are moving on. So we're just on this buying frenzy right now. So our goal next year is to do 150 million in real estate, to purchase 150 million in real estate. And on the coaching side, we will be doing 7 figures a month. We'll be doing $1 million a month by third quarter next year. So understanding how to process all this information and understanding that it takes just as much energy to shoot high as it does to shoot low. And the reason that most people aren't where they are or where they want to be, it's not because they set this lofty goal so high and then shot up at it and missed the target. That's not why. It's because they taped the target to the ground and shot it right in the bullseye. They set their target too low and hit the bullseye. That's why they're not where they want to be. You got most people, like I said, they'll start a real wholesaling business and want to make 10 grand a month and then 20 grand a month, then 40 grand a month, then 50 grand a month, then 100 grand a month. And they scale it like that when they don't understand it takes just as much time and effort to do that as it does to go from 0 to 100 grand a month. But it just requires a different level of thinking. And that's the exact same reason why Pace or Grant Cardone or whoever can make millions in the same 24 hours that the rest of us are trying to figure things out. So being able to reverse engineer that. And like I said, starting, building a team and knowing not only who to leverage, but having the correct who's to leverage. Most people will hire or bring somebody into their business out of convenience, as an example. And then they wonder why it doesn't work out. So a lot of those things have contributed to ensuring that we're going to, that we hit those goals next year.
So we started with hearing the grind that you went through, which sounded a little unpleasant. You're still waking up at 3:00 in the morning. When you were doing the grind, you were frustrated because you had debt for, I'm assuming part of that debt was the program that you had bought to go and learn how to do the real estate.
Yeah.
So you're paying off this dang program, wondering if you should have done this. And here we are 3 years later, and the trajectory is very clear that you are going to be able to go and buy $150 million worth of real estate next year, right?
That's the goal.
Give us a little bit of an inside window peek into now the grind and the time associated with what you've achieved.
Give you a peek into the grind of what I've achieved
of now. Like what does it look like now as opposed to when you first started?
Yeah.
And you're banging your head against the wall.
Great question. So before, when I was banging my head against the wall, like I was in that grind of spending every waking second that I had doing something. And it took me months to figure out that just because I'm busy does not mean I'm being productive. And with each year that's passed, I've been able to look back and understand on a higher level that it's not working harder. There's so many blue collar people in America that are just animals, man. They work harder than anybody else. But if that was the measure of success, everybody would be a millionaire. Nobody would have money problems. So breaking that habit at a higher level and understanding how to set appropriate goals. We're in fourth quarter right now. Everybody's probably, I would imagine, especially as we get closer to the new year, it's going to be setting goals, whether that's fitness, personal, business. And most people will shoot themselves in the foot by they overestimate what they can do in the short term and they underestimate what they can do in the long term. I've had so many people reach out to me I had somebody reach out to me not too long ago, within the last month or two, literally saying verbatim, Jesse, I joined Sub 2 and I'm going to be honest with you, I thought I was going to be an overnight success. That was their words. And so they don't understand that to make this kind of money, to make these changes, you have to become an entirely different person. And so I started removing myself from the grind. And once I started setting appropriate goals, here's the thing. In a way, dude, it's almost easier to, this is going to sound really weird. And I'm not here on a pedestal trying to preach to everybody that I'm all successful and making all this money, but just something that, especially even more recently on a more intimate level, I have learned that it is, in a way, it's easier to shoot bigger, to make more money than it is to do 10,000. There's about 1 million ways that you can make $10,000 a month. And when you're down here, you get caught up in all the mess. You're like, oh, this guy needs a buyer. Let me help him go dispo. I can get a part of this. Oh, there's a Gator training. I can go be a freaking Gator. Oh, I'm a connector. Let me go jump into the Zoom and be a connector. I can go wholesale. I can go blah, blah, blah. I can go be a lender. I can literally 1 million different ways that you can make 10 grand a month, right? But to go from $0 to $100,000 a month, there isn't a whole lot of ways. There's a couple ways for you to get from here to here. That's it. So in a way, you almost have a more clear path and more clear direction on how to go from here to here. You're not all of a sudden lost in the sauce, in the busyness of, I've got to be on this phone call. Now I've got to be on this Zoom. This guy hit me up in the DM. He wants to jump into another meeting. Like, you lose all of that. When you shoot high and you start reverse engineering exactly how you're going to do that and who you're going to bring in to do this, you get so much clarity. And it removes all of this noise down here. So when people reach out to me, and this is a good example, dude. I used to have people reach out to me in a DM or a text or whatever on Facebook, on Instagram, be like, hey man, I got this deal. Let's jump on a call. And dude, I would take all of those calls. But now I have such a clear path on what it is that I'm doing. I don't take those calls anymore. I don't just jump on the phone. And so as a consequence, that leaves me more time understanding what my superpower is and who to bring in to help filter and grow the things in my business that I need to hit these milestones so that we hit that goal. It not only frees me up from doing all the things, but now I get to do things to the best of my ability. And then I also get to spend more time with my family now. So that's kind of how the shift has happened. But I think that's what people are talking about when they say most people won't eat crap for 2 years so they can eat sushi for the rest of their life. That's what they're talking about, I think. Most people won't go through the hustle and the bustle and the grind of staying busy for 2 years and not produce really a whole lot of results so that they can have these epiphanies, that they can understand, create these habits and build these skills so that you can go from here to here to here to here and make these big leaps and bounds. So that's how my day-to-day has changed, man. I'm able to
that's
just bring
excellent.
and leverage other people because I have the clarity on what I want to do and how I need to do it. And I'm not lost in the sauce of jumping on a phone call, answering an email. That book, How to Buy Back Your Time, is really, really good.
Awesome.
It explains a lot of that.
Well, in closing, who are you looking to connect with and how could they connect with you?
Dude, great question. Thank you for asking. I am really looking to connect with anybody. If you guys need coaching, if you guys need help, we've got a lot of things that we're starting. If you guys are trying to figure out how to get some momentum, how to get some traction, I'm telling you, as you guys have heard throughout this podcast, it's not enough to just be busy. And it's not enough to just have the skills. I mean, most of my clients actually, as a matter of fact, I say 90% of my clients are probably sub 2 members. So it's not enough to just have the keys to the castle, so to speak. You need to know which door to start and then which door is next and then which door is after that and da. So if you guys need help with that, please reach out. I'm happy to help, whether you guys join my coaching program or not. And then on real estate side, like I said, we're buying. So if you guys got deals, I would love to let me be your number one buyer. As long as it's creative. I mean, our buy box is pretty wide open. As long as it's creative and in the United States, we're interested. Single family, multifamily, commercial, residential, doesn't matter. So would love to connect with you any way we can.
Love it. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jesse. Thanks for sharing your incredible journey and your insights. To our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. I hope you found inspiration in Jesse's narrative, transitioning from military service to real estate investing and coaching. His experiences certainly underscore the transformative impact of mindset and self-development principles. So keep investing in yourself, seeking knowledge, and thriving in your pursuits. I look forward to continuing this enriching journey with you in future episodes of Nursing Real Wealth. Have a great day.